Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
We had a fun evening on Thursday.
Oh my god, yes.
We started going to Stonewall.
Or Stonewall, Orlando. We've done this before.
Orlando, I know.
Not the real one. There were no stones thrown.
No, yeah, because I made the joke. I was like, Brooke Hogan threw the first brick at Stonewall. Because it's funny, because Orlando doesn't have celebrities. Or so we thought.
Or do we?
So we were at Stonewall, Orlando, watching Drag Race. And this guy came in with his mom, and I made a joke. I was like, that's going to be me. Bringing my mom to the gay bar to watch Drag Race and stuff. Yeah. And I looked, and I was like, that's Derek from Happy Endings. Mm-hmm. And you were like, no, it is not.
I was like, he probably just looks like him. I mean.
And I pulled up a picture and you're like, it does look like him. And I was like, hold on, let me pull up Wikipedia. And so I pulled up Wikipedia and sure enough, it was from Orlando. And I was like, that is totally him. And you were like, well, go say something. And I was like, no. And I mean, in my head, I was like, I will, I'll get to it. But I was trying to be cool. I was trying not to be a weirdo.
Well, I in the meantime, while you were trying not to be a weirdo, I saw 6 other gay dudes go up and be like, I'm such a fan.
Yeah, I know, but I was trying to play it cool. But so anyways, you were like, well, I need a drink, for real, so I'm going to go up there.
I did not need a drink. I shouldn't have had another drink. I just did it so I could say hello to him.
And so next thing I know, you were pointing to me.
Yeah.
And
I was like, that's my best friend. He's a huge fan. We love Happy Endings.
And I was like, oh God. And so I just went over. And it's Steven Garano, by the way. Yeah. And he's one of those actors that's been in a lot of things, but you just you're not entirely sure who it is. Right, and yeah. I mean, I knew him from Derek because I fucking love Happy Endings. But anyways, long story short, at Device Surprise, he came over and basically him and his mother came over and sat with us. Yeah. Pretty much, well, the whole evening. Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristin.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, we are going to, it's probably going to be a shorter episode, but we are going to cover Santa Clarita Diet. And the thing is, we've already covered Santa Clarita Diet, but that episode was kind of a disaster.
Well, we also covered 4 things inadvertently because we talked about Dick Tracy.
And then Repo. And
and we talked about our weird night at the bar with Repo.
Yeah, it was strange. Well, I mean, it wasn't new. It was our 30th episode or something, but we had sort of shook up how we did things with that episode. And so I think in a lot of ways, it felt like we were starting over. Mm-hmm. And Will ended up editing it together. So a lot of the messy parts of the episode got cut. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of on the fence where we couldn't decide if maybe we should have left it the mess. Because he sort of Frankensteined it together to make sense. But yeah, we're gonna attempt to cover it again, mostly because we fucking love this show, and we feel like it just doesn't get play.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't get the play that I think it deserves, but I don't think it even gets normal Netflix show play.
Yeah, it's real weird, and it's this is something I started to say to you the other day when we were talking about it, because we started talking about it, and I was like, let's save it for the episode, because we're already sort of
Yeah.
But both of us started to be like, I'm sure Netflix will keep it around. It's probably not not expensive. And I was in a world where they're canceling one day at a time.
Right. Which has one set.
I was gonna say, there's no way that show is expensive.
And it's also, just to say, I honestly feel really terrible about it because I haven't finished season 1, but One Day at a Time is beautiful. It is so wonderful. It's so adorable. It's so beautiful. CBS All Access wants to buy it from Netflix, and Netflix hasn't said yes or no one way or the other yet.
Oh,
but
I
they
didn't
should
know that.
fucking let CBS All Access take it, because it's so necessary and it's so great and it's just absolutely wonderful and the performances are great. It's like a little bit corny, like a, multicam show or whatever, but it is 100% wonderful. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's great.
Well, I was going to say it's critically acclaimed.
Absolutely. It's a darling.
Everyone that I, know has talked about it, that I follow has talked about it. And I was talking about this a little bit with Will yesterday before you got home. And he was like completely agreeing. He was like, I mean, that's not my type of show. Mm-hmm. But he was like, he like agreed with what I said, where he's like, it can't be expensive. And that's a niche. Like that is a like demographic that doesn't get a lot of play,
which
and
is why people are furious. Yeah.
And he was like, so if you're not connecting with an audience, then that's on you. He was like, you're not marketing the show right, because there's no excuse for why this shouldn't be working. Right.
Why this shouldn't be making you money. And the problem for me with the Netflix model is that they have to be making boku bucks off of their like big headliner stuff. They have to still be making so much money off their big headlining stuff. Stranger Things and Sabrina now and like all kinds of shit like that. There's no excuse why they can't give a solid run to these smaller shows that cost $0 to make. Those sets are already built. How much money can you really reasonably be paying Justina Machado? You know what I mean?
And Rita Moreno, it's like she's a legend, but
and also, like, I don't think Stephen Tobolowsky took that role for the paycheck, Yeah. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense to me why you can't make something like that work.
It feels like a labor of love even for the cast and crew and stuff.
100%, yeah.
So anyways, yeah, I have no real reason to be nervous for Santa Clarita Diet, other than... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do think Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant might be a little bit more expensive, but other than that...
They might be, but they're also producers on the show. And so, in that regard, they'd be in charge of paying themselves. And it's the kind of thing that if they want to do this... well, again, and I'm not implying that actors, artists should be giving away their talent, and it's certainly not people of that caliber, but it's also like, if you're doing something, rewarding, something that you believe in, it just sort of, and I don't imagine it monopolizes a ton of their time.
Right, and I was going to say, I mean, neither Drew Barrymore nor Timothy Olyphant really probably need, money. They could handle a pay cut if they decided they wanted to, but it just it's very frustrating to look down the barrel of this show that is so hilarious and so smart and so sharp, and that, like, I belly laugh at every single episode more than once, and then not be sure that on the verge of this season 3 cliffhanger, we're going to get more. Mm-hmm. That's very frustrating.
Well, and again, we don't know. Netflix doesn't release this kind of information. So for all we know, it might be one of these, like, sleeper hits.
Yeah.
There are two factors working, I'll go with, against it at this point. And the first is that it is very, very niche. Mm-hmm. It is very, well, and that bleeds right into the second factor. And it is created by a man by the name of Victor Fresco. And this is his jam. This is his stuff. He did a show that we love and have also been threatening to cover in some capacity, but he did a show called Better Off Ted.
Oh, I don't think I knew that, actually.
I think you did, because I think you told me in our previous episode.
Oh, all right. Well, he also did your favorite deep cut Andy Richter Controls the Universe.
Did he?
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
And he produced Mad About You. That's wild.
Did you just pull it up? Or?
I did, yeah. I pulled him up.
Yeah, and he has a very, very specific style.
Yeah.
It's joke dense. It's usually very witty. I'll go with smart. It's very clever. And it's sort of in the vein of Arrested Development type, but it's like that kind of like joke on joke, rapid fire stuff.
I think it's sweeter than Arrested Development.
Much more. Like, much so. And so I think it's catering to a very specific part of the population. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, with this specific show, there is, or least in my opinion, was a heavy focus on gore.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad this season.
I think it was a breeze. I think it was a piece of cake this season.
Well, that's the only thing I was going to disagree with you on, is that it is very niche, but it does filter right into horror fans' sensibilities because of what the subject matter, the undead and everything. But I think it might be too funny for like serious horror fans.
Well, I would actually say the opposite. I think like when you say serious, I think of people like aficionados and stuff, and I would think that they have the refinement to appreciate something like this.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
Our buddy Yeti, I think I can't remember. I know we have to have talked to him about it, but I can't remember if he watches this. If he doesn't, he would love this.
He should, yeah. If you're listening, Yeti, you should definitely
watch
this.
He has to. There's no reality where he can't have
even seen it, yeah, exactly.
So it's like, I think like professional people, like horror people, would like it, but when you get to like, I don't know, like I said, there's a refinement to it that I think would catch some people off guard. And I do want to say that if you're listening to this episode and you haven't watched the show, first of all, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing with your time? It'll take you a weekend.
Second of all, it will. It is so quick.
It is. For you could watch all 3 seasons in one weekend if you committed.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that because I think you'd miss stuff. But
well, then next weekend, watch it again. Come on.
Or space it out over the 2. If you started the show, or if you were turned off by the gore, or even in concept, if you're turned off by the gore, I'm going to say power through.
Yeah, I agree.
It is comedy gore, which is completely different to me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, gore mostly doesn't faze me because I just understand what it is. I see props and not viscera. But comedy gore in particular, I think there's a difference between like scary movie, snuff film. Like, I don't like that.
Well, I think there's a difference between like to compare this to other zombie movies, or zombie content. There's a difference between like Dawn of the Dead and The Walking Dead and this show. This gore is always played for comedy just by like closing in on a shot of Timothy Olyphant's face while he watches it happen. It's always played for comedy. It's always over the top. There's always like arterial gushing. It's like so over the top that it's like it's hilarious at every turn. And like, I don't really like gore either, but I find this show uses it perfectly.
Well, and I just was going to say it's very front loaded. It's very in season 1, in the beginning of season 1. And as I recall, there's a fair amount in season 2, but I honestly, I mean, I don't know if maybe that was a note they got, like a criticism or something, but I found it relatively tame this season. I mean, there was a handful of stuff.
Well, it's the type of show where like I forget how gory it is when I'm not looking at it because it's just so funny.
That's
the
true.
Jokes are what I remember. Yeah. I don't remember the blood. I remember the jokes.
And the show does do a good job of selling Sheila's plight. So in a way, all the viscera, all the gore, when I see it on this show, I'm happy for Sheila.
Yeah, no, totally.
It's like, oh, how nice for her. There was a particularly funny and disturbing joke about Ron. He brings her his baby teeth.
Yeah.
And she's eating them in one scene, and she just says that they're like stale corn nuts.
Yeah.
And that's so funny and disgusting.
because she's just like sitting there crunching it, and Joel is like, "Are you eating Ron's baby teeth?" And she's like, "They taste like stale corn nuts, but I can't stop eating them. I love stale corn nuts." And it's just like that's the other thing I wanted to really hit is like every single actor in this show is working at the absolute top of their game, like comedic delivery wise. And I can't stress enough how well they all work together. Mm-hmm. It's so perfect.
Yeah, it is so weirdly relatable because like that was a thing where that just immediately made me think of you because all I could think about was that trail mix that you like so much.
God, I fucking love that stuff.
Specifically because of those corn nuts in it,
the corn nuts are the best part. The corn nuts are the best part. I will not apologize.
It was just so specifically relatable. And again, in case you're listening to this and don't know what it is, we could set it up.
We could set it up. I was going to say, before you set it up, when you go to the grocery store later, you should take a picture of that snack mix.
Okay.
For the Instagram.
So Santa Clarita Diet is an American horror comedy web television series created by Victor Fresco for the streaming service. Steaming Paella Netflix. The streaming service Netflix, starring Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant. It is about Joel and Sheila Hammond. They are everyday suburban real estate agents in Santa Clarita, California. The couple face a series of obstacles when Sheila has a physical transformation into a zombie and starts craving human flesh. With Joel and the family trying to help Sheila through the tough time, they have to deal with the neighbors, cultural norms, and getting to the bottom of a potentially mythological mystery. And that is something that the show does in spades.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading some interesting notes, and apparently, when setting out to create the show, Victor wanted to do a family show with an interesting approach that we haven't seen before. And so that's where the zombie angle came in.
He nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talk about that, about how it's like, this is not, I mean, it's a zombie show because she's a zombie,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a show about a family.
Yeah, and I love the way that Joel and Sheila speak to each other. It's a lot like listening to Dax Shepard and Kristen Bell. Like, it's a lot of therapy speak. And I put this on Twitter the other day, and I was not joking. They are the healthiest television marriage I've seen since Coach and Tammy Taylor on Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's the kind of thing that it was like, I feel like we don't get a ton of that.
Mm-hmm.
A ton of, like, truly healthy, truly in love married couples and family units.
Well, I want to say I think we're getting more of it now. We are past that late 90s, early aughts thing of, like, the stupid, fat, dumb, bad husband and father and the smoke show wife who does everything, but who still gets labeled the shrew. Like, we're really getting past that, and I think there's so many more shows with families like this one now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really couldn't appreciate that more than I do.
Because it's like, for me, I feel like this is a show that could get boring. You know, I feel like it could get redundant or it could get dull. And so far, that's not happened. I find it wild that a show with effectively 4 cast members. I mean, there is a revolving door of, like, guest stars and reoccurring characters and stuff.
Yeah, but it's Joel, Sheila, Abby, and Eric, and that's pretty much it for, like, full cast members.
And that we haven't exhausted these dynamics between them yet, I think is truly a feat. And, I mean, I even wrote in my notes that I was like, this show goes off in places. Like, it actually allows the plot to evolve rather than constantly reverting back to the status quo.
Right.
But it, like, it just feels... It feels fresh. That was another note. That's actually why they're realtors or realtors. I don't. That was from season 2, and it kind of carried over. And
the correct pronunciation is realtor.
I hate it.
But Joel and Sheila say realtor.
It just feels better. That feels.
I mean, it's wrong phonetically.
Yeah,
there's no
okay.
A in the middle, but it's a really funny quirk that they call themselves realtors.
But anyways, that profession was chosen for them because it gets them out into the world.
Yeah.
And forces kind of like a friendliness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have to be charming and appealing in order to do their job. And so he just thought it would be like an interesting element for the show.
It is.
Yeah.
I totally agree. He's a very smart guy.
Mm-hmm. There's such a balance between, like, real horrific life and death stakes and then, like, mundane in and outs of familial life.
Yeah.
And it's walked like such a fine tightrope act. It's so good. And that is another thing, is there's the written work, you know, the work on the page about the family, about loving each other and being good. But this is also a quadret, like, of extremely talented actors who have the most dynamite chemistry with each other.
They really do.
Every single one of them.
And I was going to say in every single possible pairing of them. Because, like, Eric and Sheila have not shared a lot of screen time, but whenever Eric and Joel are, like, hanging out together, that is chef's kiss amazing to me.
Well,
the 2 of them together, I can't get enough.
Yes. Okay. I pitched the show as sort of like Dexter meets Cougar Town.
Yes, yeah.
It has that those sensibilities. It is absolutely a suburban half-hour comedy about like a family in a cul-de-sac.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's the sort of like style and plot of like Dexter.
Yeah, and the like color saturation and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so originally we were sort of watching these three families unfold. And I actually kind of miss, I don't remember if they said what happened to them, but I actually sort of miss Rick and Alondra a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like he got another show. And
that happens with the show.
I think he got a show. I don't remember his name, but I remember it because I liked him on Judging Amy. But yeah, I think he's on another show right now. I think it's that NBC procedural with Rochelle Lefebvre.
Okay. But yeah, I couldn't remember if they explained what happened to them. And obviously... Oh shit, what was Eric's dad's name?
His stepdad's name was Dan.
Dan. Obviously, Dan is not on the show anymore because he was killed. He was dealt with. But Dan and Lisa were the other family. And so it was really established that Eric didn't have this good relationship with his stepfather. He was a dick. And so Eric sort of has this like father vacuum, this father hole in his life. And he's using Joel to fill that. And it's a dynamic that we've seen before, but golly, it feels brand new. I mean, it feels fresh here.
It really does. And I think part of it is because Joel understands what Eric is looking for, and he's not 100% into giving it to him, but he can't just turn him away, so he like is reluctantly being a father to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Eric he's a lot. He's incredibly smart. Is he a genius?
I don't know that he's a genius, but he's like a gifted kid.
Yeah, he is incredibly smart and has a lot of potential, and he has been sucked into this family, the next door neighbors, life and death stakes world in a way that is delightful.
Mm-hmm.
I speaking of delightful, I am so happy that they have kept Lisa, that they have kept his mother on the show.
Yeah.
It's Mary Elizabeth Ellis. She is most famous. I mean, she's been in gobs of things, but she's most famous as the waitress from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Actually, she was in another one of our favorite shows that was only for one season, Perfect Couples.
She was in that. That's right, yeah.
But she plays Eric's piece of work mother, and especially in season 1, she was kind of awful. And she's not an omnipresence on the show, but she is consistently in all 3 seasons, and they have really allowed her to grow and evolve, and they've made sure to keep her very likable in a way that surprised me.
Well, it's one of those things where so often on other TV shows, the secondary characters, it feels like they leave the scene and go power down. Mm-hmm. But like, I believe that Lisa keeps living her life when we're not seeing her. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what's so good about this show and similar shows and like Better Off Ted and other shows, you know, that he's made and just in the same vein. I can like see her going about her life when we're not seeing her. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what's so important.
In a lot of ways, I think of her as such a role model. Like she's a bit of a play on the bored suburban.
Yeah.
I'll go with trophy wife. I'm not entirely sure, but it's refreshing to know that she actually is a person and that she actually does care, because I cannot recall if we really got that in season 1 or 2. I think we did. We didn't rewatch those seasons before we did this, so we just watched season 3. Mm-hmm. But she has a really great scene this season where Abby and Eric are being investigated for blowing up the fracking site.
Yep.
And the FBI is closing right in on them, and they're about to be exposed, and she just waltzes into the scene and shows them the closet, and there's, no C4 in the closet, and she's like, she even speaks in like lawyer talk. She like knew her rights and everything, and she's like, okay, well, I've helped, now you can leave, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, she was married to a cop for how many years? She, probably did her research about some stuff.
But we would forget that. We would forget that she's smart because she seems like such a bimbo. But when the FBI leaves, she's sort of like, I figured out what was going on. And she like pieced it all together and covered it up for them so that they didn't go to jail. Mm-hmm. And then tells Abby, she's like, you need to go home and tell your parents. And if you don't, I will, blah, blah, blah. And then she also has like a second talk with Abby where she's like, look, I know there's something going on with you and Eric, and that's fine. But she was like, he is my world. And if you take him away from me, or if you do anything to ruin that, you know, I will come after you.
Well, it was sort of a really nice companion to that scene in season 2 where she like did Abby's makeup. And they were talking about them. And it was such a sweet, great scene. And Abby ended up loving the makeup and everything. And it was like, it's showing that Lisa actually is a really good mom. She's just kind of a, like, ditz a little, but she's, like, really smart and she's a really good mom. And it's showing the two different sides of what a good mom she is, where she's sort of like, you're the daughter I never had. And then she's like, but I will fucking end you if you ruin my son.
Well, and she even sort of, like, when it was over, she was like, oh, God, you made me be serious, Mom. I hate that. Don't ever make me do that again. And it just, like, I don't know. That's very on brand for me to like and have a lot to say about that character. But, I mean, even and she also just has such a rich personal life. Like, she's really mastered it all. Like, she's figured out how to do it. Because I just love at the party where she's she's just straight up trying to get laid at the party with that guy, Goren Viznik.
Goren Viznik, yeah.
There you go. And he ends up leaving with Joel, and she's just like, she's bummed, but she's like, I'm going to go home and take a Valium, and if I can still stand, I'll come back later. Yeah. We're not quite in Karen Walker territory, you know, but it's...
No, but it's like Karen Walker 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can just go through the list, talk about characters. We just talked about Eric. We could talk about Abby.
I love Abby.
Yeah, Liv Hewson is the actress.
We didn't say Eric is played by an actor named Skylar Gisondo, and he's also just a cutie pie. I think he's my favorite, but...
We're both kind of in love with him.
I'm not kind of in love with him. I'm 100% in love with him. He's my absolute favorite. He is such a cutie pie. His comic delivery, he's only 22, we just found out, which means he started this show when he was 19. His comedic timing is like the stuff of legend. I couldn't have even tried to have that comedic timing when I was 19. It's wild. He's so good.
He has such a way where I don't know how to explain it. I want to say he's boyish. He absolutely is. That's objective. He's boyish. But and it's not immature, but he does sort of keep relating back to childlike things. Like one of your favorites is when Sheila's arm is like disconnected and he's watching them try to put it back in, and he crouches in the door frame and just like slides down, and he goes, "This is what woozy boys do."
I fully died when he said that. I cannot explain. Because you're right, it is very boyish, but he's handsome. I guess I think he's handsome, but
I do too.
It's very boyish, and he's like covered in freckles, and he just does look like a Southern California dude. And everything about the ways that, like you said, the ways that he like relates his situations to the world and his previous life experience, and the way that he interacts with all the characters. And again, I can't stress enough the comedic timing, because it is wildly perfect.
It's in particular the usage of the word boy. He's constantly using the word boy, and that is one of my favorite words. And it's not gotten me into trouble, but it's like caused issues where I remember we were writing for Fairy Tale one time, and I wanted to use the word boy, and you were like, I know how you mean it, but you were like, it's not going to come off right.
It's not going to read that way. It's going to read like children, like boy children. Yeah.
And I mean it in the way that like Stewie is talking to Rupert, where he was like, you were looking at the boys again, weren't you? And so I love the word boy.
Yeah.
And so like we would be talking, and I'd be like, oh, I love like we'd be talking like funny, like cutesy funny, but I'd be like, I love boy butts.
Yeah.
And by that I mean like of age handsome men, but with like a youthful vigor type of a thing.
Sure.
And you were like, I get it, but you were like, sometimes it registers as a child. Right. And I was like, no, I don't mean that. But I just love how he does it, because the one that actually killed us is when he was trying to distract the zombie at the end.
Yeah.
And he was like, my mom says I'm a delicious boy. Because it's like daddy's boy level.
It really is. It really is. And I just like, both of those times, because the second one kind of calls back to the first one. And it's only like 2 or 3 episodes apart, but it just is so perfect for for Eric, and that's the thing. That's another thing that we say a lot, where I really think by this point, but for sure by season 2, the writers really know the characters. Like that's not ever something Abby would say. Abby wouldn't say, "My mom says I'm a delicious girl." But it definitely is something that Eric would absolutely
it's real.
say.
Lisa has said that to him one way, and then he repurposed it literally this way. Because I wrote one down about that's the kind of humor that you get in spades with the show.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. I wrote an example down. I guess I didn't, but this is a joke-dense show. There are jokes on jokes on jokes, and the jokes are situational. They're plot-based, and they also build.
I was going to say they call back a lot.
They do.
Yeah.
It's witty and sort of, I guess, bantery, but I'm trying to hold on to my train of thought. But this kind of works, but it was like Joel and Sheila were having a conversation, and they were relating it back to serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
And Sheila said something, and Joel was like, and then that's when they serial kill you.
Yeah.
And it just made me laugh because it was like, serial killing isn't a type of killing.
It's not the method by which
I was
you
like,
kill.
It's not a method of murder. And it's just that kind of banter, and it's that sort of the way that he relates to the world, and the way that he's able to sort of, it's not double entendres, but things can have double meanings in a way that is so rewarding.
Oh, are you trying to get to the joke that he made about the English language?
What was it?
Where he was like, would your evening be improved by the company of a male escort? And then he's like, sorry, that sounded weird. A boyfriend. And he's like, no, not a boyfriend. Damn you, English language, you convoluted mongrel.
I mean, no, but that works.
It's so good.
But it's like, there's something about, like, I think this might have been it, and this one certainly works, but there's something about, like, they're in the middle of these, like, life and death stakes, having these very mundane, bantery conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, we're going to survive this. We're going to get out. It'll be a great story. We tell our grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, our grandchildren? And she's like, our respective grandchildren. It's just such a... There's so much happening, and like I said, it's joke dense, and I was gonna guess there was a joke a minute, and so out of curiosity, in episode 7, I tallied jokes, and I was pretty liberal, I will say. Anything that it was even remotely kind of like a or a play, I counted. But I counted 72 jokes in episode 7 alone.
Which is more than one per minute, and also insane.
Yeah, because they build. It's like they build on previous things within the scene, but as you mentioned, things even from previous episodes or seasons.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so good. We haven't really mentioned Drew Barrymore. We've talked a little bit about Timothy Olyphant, but it was effectively Drew Barrymore's show, although there is a case to be made now that is Timothy Olyphant's show.
Boy, I tell you, first of all, he's the best looking man I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God, he's so attractive, and he's aging so well.
So well.
The gray is so good.
So well. And then, I never watched Justified, and I never watched Deadwood. I know that they're very good, and I know that they're critically acclaimed, and I also know that they are hard dramas. And so I knew him mainly as a dramatic actor before this show. Mm-hmm. And to watch him, a man who has been, I believe, nominated for Emmys for dramatic roles, just absolutely own the comedy in this is so crazy to watch. It is, I couldn't imagine anybody else as Joel.
No,
not a single other person, not even Josh Duhamel, who is his doppelganger. I couldn't see anybody else playing this. He has this, like, manic, panic.
It's like a neurotic exasperation.
Neuroses that, like, he tries so hard to be like the Zen Southern California dad, but he is, so far past the end of his rope, and he just is, it's constant panicked neuroses at every turn, and the way that he portrays that is so good.
Especially pairing him with the character of Sheila and pairing Timothy with Drew. They have like, I believe those people have known each other their entire lives. It's like Sheila and Joel are high school sweethearts, and Drew and Timothy feel that way.
Agreed.
Because I was even looking, I was like, have they worked together before? Like,
I don't think so.
No, I mean, they're both in Scream, but they don't share screen time.
Yeah, they're in separate movies.
Yeah. There's sort of a balance, or a thing happening with the show, because it happens with Joel and Sheila, and it's happening with Abby and Eric, where it's sort of like these like neurotic men, and then they're like
ball-busting women.
Yeah.
Like strong, confident, like won't put up with your shit women. And it's like they're so in love with them, but they're also terrified the whole time.
Yeah, and it's like, because Sheila is so fearless because of her zombie-ness, it can cause her to be irrational or unreasonable at times.
Yeah.
And that's a very tricky thing to pull off, to be in the middle of life and death stakes and to be picking a personal argument, you know? That gets very annoying very quickly. And I think, you know, Drew Barrymore is such a pro. And also for both of them, it feels like they can do this with their eyes closed.
Yeah. Well, like, and I mean, to that end, I have known who Drew Barrymore was for as long as I could remember, because I saw E.T. when I was super young. I've been a hard fan of Drew Barrymore since I was like 11, probably. So that's 22 years now. I've loved Drew Barrymore and enjoyed everything I've seen her in. And for whatever reason,
and different things,
and totally different things, but this for me somehow feels like the culmination of her career. It's like everything's been building to this role of Sheila, and it's like I couldn't ask for anything better. Like if she were
such a masterwork,
and if she were to say I'm retiring after Santa Clarita Diet gets canceled, I would be like, fine, bravo. I'm sad that you won't work anymore, but what a note to go out on.
Oh man, I want this to continue. I really hope. I hope that we need, at the very least, 5 seasons. We need 5 seasons.
I agree. I mean, I would settle for 4 if they knew it going in and they were able to finish it. But I don't want another Sense8 situation where they crammed a full season's worth of plot into a 2-hour movie. So, yeah, I think I would be fine with 5. I agree with you. It can't be that expensive to make, and it's so excellent. And these 4 actors are, I mean, Liv Hewson and Skylar Gazzondo are young, in their early 20s, and all 4 of these people are working at the top of their game in such a crazy way.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the names. I wanted to make a list of all of their aliases.
Oh, yeah.
And I just ran out of time, and I also don't have a sharp enough memory, but I think it's a good example of the show, of why the show works and how the show is funny, is they very frequently are going undercover. So they're very frequently coming up with aliases, with fake names. And that's the joke, is that the names are bad or the names are silly, but it is consistently funny every single time. And because what was the one that you said yesterday?
Oh, well, it was because you had the screen grab from their faces as our cover, our header photo for a while, and he introduced them, and he was like, "I'm Wilford Brimley, and this is my wife, Jessica Tandy."
That's what it was. I was thinking it was Hume Cronin, but it was Wilford Brimley.
It was Hume Cronin.
Was it Hume
think
Cronin?
You're right. All I could think of was Wilford Brimley, but I think you're right. I think it was Hume Cronin.
Like I said, it still manages to be fresh, because he made up one. Well, they were Belle and Sebastian one time. I remember that.
Yeah.
But he made up one where his name was like Troy something, and then she was like Dr. something McTroy.
Saint Troy.
Saint Troy. Yeah. And she just turned and looked at him.
Well, because then they had to be like a brother-sister duo or something.
And so then they had to explain why her name was different, but also used his first name. Oh my God. It was so funny. And he can never keep them straight, because the running joke this time was that he introduced himself to these 2 mobsters as Roy Eastman, but he forgot later and said that his name was Dr. Kodak.
Yeah.
And so they were like, I thought your last name was Eastman. So he then became Roy Eastman Kodak.
For the whole season.
And through the whole season, that's what the dude called him. He was like, we'll find Roy Eastman Kodak.
Yeah.
It's just like, I want to stop and go watch the whole thing over again.
I know, it's
so
excellent.
funny.
I really, really want people to watch it. I really, really want a season 4.
And like I said, it's really growing in a way where I mentioned this earlier, but I was like, it's like he's exploring less, like in the world building and stuff. It's less like, what are these things? 'Cause we're introduced to this organization, the Knights of Serbia.
Yeah.
And he's like, less, what is the Knights of Serbia? And more like, who are the Knights of Serbia? Like, who are these people that would populate a world like this? And we're introduced to just such funny and weird characters. Because it's like, Carrie Kinney plays Petra Balzic.
Yeah.
And she's like the head of the Knights of Serbia.
And if anybody's watching Superstore,
she's Jerusha from Superstore.
Glenn's wife, Jerusha.
And she sort of, when she's introduced, she's like, I know everybody expects Xena to ride in on like a horse and stuff, but she's actually just this bureaucratic, woman. And we just like, there's such a cast of characters, because now it like appears that Sheila has a team.
Yep. With
it's like
Tommy and Ron and Jean.
And yeah, it just like, and I mean, we have Mr. Balllegs. I don't even know what his deal is. Like, that's something I would hate on another show. I would think it was so weird and so disconnected.
Yeah.
And somehow it works on this episode. And the way things pay off, because something was said in season 2, I think. It was said a while ago about how he was covered in eyes.
Yeah, it was at the beginning of this season.
Was at the beginning. And then that actually pays off like 9 episodes later. We see, and he is in fact covered in eyes. It's so... it's so weird and gross and hilarious. So, you know what? I'll go ahead and let it in there.
Yeah. I mean, all we can do is recommend it, and it would take you very little time to watch all 3 seasons and tweet something at Netflix about how much you like it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I guess that's it for us today. You can follow us on Twitter at So I'm Watching, Instagram at So I'm Watching This Show. We're also on Facebook and Tumblr, So I'm Watching This Show. Is there anything you want to put on the Spotify playlist? There wasn't a lot.
No.
And we already have We Belong by Pat Benatar.
Yeah, actually, there are fun songs, but no, nothing that stuck out.
All right. Other than that, you can just go to our website, soimwatching.com, which links out to everything. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. Bye.
Okay, bye.